Come on through, Cookie. I want to put my soapbox. That's basically it. Let's talk about drag and all its forms. What, Hey, you guys. Thanks so much for clicking on this video. I wanted to pop in here really quickly and talk to you guys about a mini series that is actually showing right now on FX. It is called Feud, and it is actually about the life of, well, basically the feud of Bette Davis and Joan Crawford. As I've told you all a million times in the past, one of my favorite movies is actually Mom and Dearest. And that's not the only one. I love Bette Davis and Joan Crawford. They are like, child, that's when movies were movies. That's when movies actually had plots and stories, and the stories were complete. And the characters were realized, through there was all those holes weren't in the story. They took the time back then to really write things, and when they shot movies, there was a lot of symbolism and there was a lot of things going on, and things were just done properly, and people took their time. Okay, and we didn't lean on special effects and all of that. They did actual storytelling. So a lot of those black and white movies, honey, I live for. But everybody knew that there was a feud. Joan Crawford and Bette Davis were two Hollywood starlets who literally could not stand each other. Do you understand me? And when I say couldn't stand each other, they could not stand each other. I am not going to literally go through this whole thing and go scene by scene with you and that whole kind of thing. Just kind of can't do that, because this is actually broken up into 3 parts. This is actually the first part is what actually showed last Sunday, and it's an hour long. We got Jessica Lange playing Joan Crawford, which she is. I definitely think there's some awards coming with this if it continues on. If part 2 and 3 or anything like part 1, there's some awards coming, some nominations. Susan Sarandon is playing Bette Davis. So we have 2 starlets of our time playing these 2 starlets of that time. The disdain between the 2 is so evident, and everything is done in such a classy way. It is just a flawless shade, honey. Flawless shade. The way in which they throw shade at each other, or threw shade at each other, it was something else. I mean, they said some shit to each other. And like, there's one scene where Joan Crawford actually is explaining to her husband, or her male friend, her male friend of that time period, because he was saying, you admire her. And she did. Because they were both the top of the craft. They were each other's sole competition. Okay? Joan Crawford, she said, the one thing that I want from her is her respect, and she will give it to me. She will give me her respect if I have to kill both of us to get it. And that bitch meant that shit. She went on to tell him a story about her one husband, one of her failed marriages. She said, she's the reason for my one failed marriage. She said, because I didn't really want him like that. He was my boyfriend. She approached him, made advances toward him. He didn't want her. And just to seal the deal, I married the bastard. And then I eventually ended up divorcing him. But I just meant she wasn't getting him. I said, girl. Now that's when you know you hate a bitch. When you go so far as to marry somebody that you don't want, just so they can't have them, child, please. It was something else. But the whole thing revolved around, they were both, dwindling stars at this point. The point that they start with in this movie. See, I saw a documentary years ago. I actually have it on DVD. It's a documentary that literally went through things about their lives, each of them, and talked about their feud a bit. They went kind of deep into their feud, but not nowhere near as deep as this, because here they're actually acting it out. It's more like like a dramatization instead of a documentary. Good as shit. This shit is so good. It really is. But they were focusing on how, because the movie that resurrected their careers, both of them, because Joan was just kind of dwindling. Her last husband had passed, and she was struggling. She was struggling financially. Bette wasn't really struggling as much financially because she was on Broadway, but shit wasn't like it should be. Um, she was in a marriage that was getting ready. Let me tell you about this marriage with her. She was married to a fool that was her co-star on another movie she did, and everything seemed right with them. It was kind of like that, Brad and Angelina thing, how they met on set and the love affair blossomed, and they married and all this, and then they really just didn't like each other. Okay, he comes to her, just pops in and tells her, "Oh, I have something for you that you've been wanting for a very long time." And it was a black velvet box, baby. I thought it was going to be like a pearl necklace or a diamond necklace. Very much reminiscent of the necklace, of the box that Melania Trump handed off to Michelle. Okay. Very reminiscent of that box, but it was a black velvet box. Honey, when she opened up the box, it was divorce papers. One of her sad divorce papers. Baby, they had two of them, got to going back and forth, honey, and he called, she's like, "You're a manipulator, you're a bastard." This, and they went back and forth. He said to her, she said, "You're a drunk." She said, "You're a drunken bastard too." And then they start fucking. They got down. Then you see him laying on the bed, and she's over there. He sleep, and she signing the papers. Then you see it flip flop. You see her laying in the bed sleep, and it's morning time, and you see him getting up leaving. And it was like they had an understanding, like, "Child, we don't like each other. We really don't. And yeah, let's get divorced." But I think, she just wasn't the woman to be outdone. She pissed off that he brought the papers on her. Hilarious. Hilarious, hilarious. But this was just her candor. Both of them. They were bitches. In every form of the word, they were bitches. They really were. So it goes in and it tells you about how they ended up it was an accident, basically, finding the book, Whatever Happened to Baby Jane. And found that book. It was just something that just the planets lined up and it fell in their hands. And Joan took it and tried to pull some strings, and there was a lot of bridges that she had torn down and burned down, and it resurrected her career. It resurrected the producer's career, as well as the exec at Warner Brothers. All their old asses. That movie blew up, became a classic, and it resurrected their old ass careers because nobody was working with them. They were old. Their time was over. And it was something else. I mean, because the guy at Warner Brothers didn't even want to deal with Bette Davis because she had sued him years before over some contract situation. He was so mad at her. He was like, "I'm not going to work with that bitch. That bitch sued me, this, that, thing, the other." And he's like, "That cunt." Now, you got to go a little bit for a man to really just blurt out. Then we're talking back in the 60s, or was it the 50s? It might have been the 50s. The 50s. And he come out and call her a cunt. I said, "Child," it was a mess. But they ended up doing it. So let me start wrapping this up. So as far as we go into the whole thing. Joan presents that. She gets it all going. She goes to Bette Davis. And she talks Bette into it. She's like, "Girl, this is going to help us both. Bitch, I don't like you and you don't like me." All along, there's a reporter who she's running, she's a busybody, nosy. And a reporter, she comes in and she's always trying to get the dirt. The media has always been a mess as far back as it's been existing. Um, she was so deep. The reporter was so deep that in the very beginning, you see Joan at the Golden Globes, and Marilyn Monroe won an award over her. She talked about Marilyn Monroe so bad. She talked about her clothes, the fact that she was all whore, the fact that she slept with everybody, and the bitch wasn't shit. She wasn't talented. Oh, she talked about her like a dog. Then got drunk up, honey, and at the party and acted a fool, honey. And the little reporter chick caught it all and came to her house, had it the next day and told her, "You've had time to sleep it off. Now tell me, give me some dish, or I'll be forced to go ahead and write how you had to be drugged out of the party afterwards in a drunken stupor." I said, "Oh, she was a mess." I said, "Oh, Child Hollywood was a mess." It really was. It still is. But they end up going onto the set, and when they get onto the set, we see back then they didn't have all the stylists, and they had people, they had wardrobe people, but remember this budget on this film was kind of because nobody was really taking a chance on them. And the movie Whatever Happened to Baby James talks about two sisters. One used to be a star. She was a child star. The other one was always jealous of her sister, and there was a car accident that she caused. She hit her sister with a car, and sister ended up paralyzed, and she ended up having to take care of her, and she just mistreated the hell out of her. Bette Davis played Jane, and Joan knew what she was doing. She made Bette Davis play Jane because, again, this movie was listed as a horror movie. So she threw her out there to play Jane because, of course, everybody will hate the villain. Everybody would love the one in the wheelchair. She stays in a wheelchair for the balance of the movie. She's the one being mistreated. That's why she gave herself that role. But, baby, let me tell you something. It's a battle to the finish because when I say Bette Davis turned her motherfucking role as the sister, honey, listen. She carried on. Because that was the thing. It was their thing back then. Actresses and actors had to create those characters for themselves. Everything wasn't all thought out for you. Your wardrobe and your hair, it wasn't all thought out for you. You had people to help you, but it was really on you. So this is when you really get to see that in play. They were there at the studio. Bette comes up on Joan and she says, "Girl, you're supposed to be playing a woman that has not seen the sunlight in like 20 years. And girl, you're sitting up in here." She said, "Girl, lose the shoulder pads. You have these shoulder pads on, honey, and you're looking all wrinkled. And there's too much of that red lipstick, honey. You look like you're going to a party. You're supposed to be looking downtrodden." And she's like, "Oh, no. No, baby. You're not going to upstage me on screen." So she's doing her best to still look like a starlet, which is not even what her role really calls for. But that's what she wanted to do. So Bette, and then Joan has always been prettier than Bette, okay? And Bette knew it. So Bette goes back there, and they're like, "We got all these wigs and shit out here, this, that, and the other." Baby, this was the turner for this whole episode. Bette goes and puts on, it's a wig that Joan wore for a role she had done literally about 15 years prior. The wig had been sitting around and nobody hadn't touched it, and all the time it was just as funky. Honey, she took the wig and put it on. Then she did her makeup. Her makeup was it was just like, just too much makeup, clownish, if you will, and beat her face. All this loose powder, she gave herself so like highlighter all over her face, honey. She looked so crazy. Then gave herself a beauty bar. She gonna say yes. So she come out, baby. When she walked out of her little trailer box, honey, and they had already shot Joan's first scenes, and she rocked them out. She rocked them out. Again, they're like, "We just pulled it together." Baby, when Bette came across the set, baby, everybody was looking because her daughter was with her, Betty's daughter. And she said, "Are you serious? Are you sure? Mom, you look crazy." She said, She's deranged. She said she is. She's deranged. She picked this old dress. It looked like an old baby doll dress. Honey, she came across that thing walking, baby, and got over there. And the producer looked at her and she said, "Yes, I'm ready, Daddy." I said, "Oh, bitch." And he looked at her and said, "Bitch." And the whole set went up, baby. They went up. They were like, "Bitch, you just broke it up, honey." And that is how the character of the crazy ass sister, the deranged sister, came to life. Bette Davis gave that character all of what it was. That was not the way that Warner Brothers put her together. Bette Davis put her together like that. Baby, I sat on the end of that bed and I said, "Betty, you had best to do it." It was fabulous. I love what FX is doing here because the documentary I have, it doesn't go into all of these different things. This is fabulous. Fabulous. Last thing, let's talk about this. Another thing about the two women and how they work. Because, see, as much as they work apart and work against each other, they work together, too. They're bitches. And they're not going to let anybody control them. There was a whole thing about pay. They had the little thing when they were signing. Joan caught a little glimpse of Betty's contract before they signed. And she said she's getting $600 more a week than me. And remember, Bette was actually on Broadway working. Joan hadn't worked in 3 years. So, yeah. Really, Joan? Sit down. Honey, Joan told her, "I want $1,500 more than her. Or am I coming?" It was a mess. And the bitch got it. Okay? So, anyway. All right, so the little reporter woman, she invites both of them to her house for a formal dinner. They both get there. They got their best black shit on, and both the bitches were drunks. So they both got there. There are no other guests. She got them back together again. Now she wants dish. Come on and give me some dish. Because I know some shit's going on. I know y'all don't get along. How did y'all do this? How is this supposed to work out? They were in the midst of filming. And this is when you see, as nasty as they were to each other, they would allow no one to puppeteer them in the feud that they actually had. That was a feud between them. They respected the part they played in the feud and would not allow anyone else to play a part in that feud. Them two bitches sat at that woman's table and gave her motherfucking dust. One sat on one side, one sat on the other, and all they did was pitch compliments back and forth, ping-ponged across the table until the woman said, they said to the lady, she says, "Oh, what are we having for dessert?" And the woman said, "We're going to skip dessert. I've had enough sugar." She was mad as hell. I said, "You bitches better work. No, we hate each other, bitch, but you will not benefit off of the fact that we don't like each other. Them bitches bound together." I said, "Child, now that's what you call a bitch." I lived. I enjoyed it so much. I cannot wait until next Sunday for the second part to come on. I'm telling you, if you're not paying attention and you're not watching Feud on FX, you're doing yourself a disservice, a complete disservice. It's fabulous. Absolutely fabulous. FX knows they can get down and do it. Hey, that damn Ryan Murphy, you did this. Now, I was really unhappy with Ryan Murphy with that last season of American Horror Story. You, in 1 hour, you've really made it up to me with that, because this feud with Bette Davis and Chuck, fabulous. All right, I will talk to you guys soon. Bye.